Hello and welcome to another Atypical Philosopher video with myself, Jonathan M.S. Pearce. This is a frontline update for the 19th of November 2022. Let's get straight to it. Here's the map of Ukraine. Not a lot of news from anything happening overnight. Quite a quiet night, all things considered, as far as I know anyway. The figures that Ukraine have released for yesterday: 420 liquidated personnel, 6 tanks, 7 APCs, 2 artillery systems and 2 vehicles, so no drones, which I think is or cruise missiles, which is reflective of the fact that it's been a quiet sort of 24 hours on that front. A few other things to note. This is particularly important, I think, because it gives the capability of the Ukrainians to strike deep into sort of what you might think is safe Russian territory. The Russians had originally denied that this happened until video came out to confirm that it had happened. So the Russian media mass showed footage of tonight's strike, so this is last night, of a Ukrainian naval drone on the Sheshkaris oil harbor in Novorossiysk. Probably pronounced that very poorly. Explosion was at the 8th berth in the Tsemes Bay. Earlier, Russian company Transneft, which owns a berth, stated there was no explosion, and then you can see an explosion in that and a couple of videos. So where is this? Well, this is where the Russians were moving some of their naval fleet. I think they're aiming to. So when you started seeing Sevastopol get hit with drones. This is before the sea drones. Actually, it was the aerial drones that were hitting like the naval buildings and what have you in Sevastopol. I should pronounce it correctly. They started moving their naval fleet to a port that wasn't really able to deal with the fleet, and I think that's this port here. So that it would need some you know changes to that port to take in these sorts of vessels. Anyway, it is that port that has now been hit, which is really interesting. It's like, okay, let's get our fleet out of Sevastopol to this safer place here. Oh, that place has been hit as well. Where do we put them now? And I think this says, even if it wasn't a huge explosion, huge problems for that port, it sends a signal, doesn't it? So I think that's really quite important. Okay, to just give you a few other little bits and pieces. So this is uh, actually, no, I will come to that later. This is the railway station that I told you about in Ilovaisk, which is, and I neglected to say that it's a super important place historically the uh, for the Ukrainians, because this was a scene of a really terrible military episode in the 2014 conflict onwards. So Ilovaisk, and I said that there looked like a train with probably a bunch of SPGs on is what was being targeted, but also the railway itself. And this is the footage from, or some pictures from Ilovaisk after the HIMARS attacks. And the question is, how long will that take to fix? How much of a disruption to the the Russian logistics will that be? So just to remind you of where that was, this is down here at that junction there, and that it will be important for supplying this whole um, western region here. So not only are they hitting up around Starobilsk and north of Starobilsk, just there, but they're also hitting key junctures in the or junctions in the railway network further down south, and this will affect supply to the western areas. So that's super important. Um, Okay, let's get on to our front line. Let's go and look at the northeastern area, which is Kupiansk down to Svatove, down to Kreminna. Not really, so that just to let you know, that's here to there. Not really all that much news to report, to be perfectly honest. There's heavy fighting going on still, artillery attacks and whatnot, but not much swapping of territory on either sides. So we've got, this is Svatove there. I got some credible information that Pavlivka, just southwest of Svatove, is nearly liberated by the AFU. We are waiting for official announcement. I've heard nothing since then. That would be big news, but I haven't heard anything else about that. So just to let you know, that would be, in this sort of area. Um, uh, But yeah, not heard any news from that since then. Very close. And I'm going to tell you something about that little place there. So, oh, just to let you know about that, there's a SAM, a surface to air missile system. So that Popivka is going to be somewhere around here, a very small place. Yeah, there you go, Popivka. That would be quite far behind these lines. So, and that'd be quite impressive. Now, yesterday I showed you a bunch of footage of concerning the hunting down of a Tor system. I don't know if you remember that. It was this, and I was giving you different snippets and bits of footage showing how drones followed a Tor M2 surface to air missiles system worth about $30 million. I didn't show you it being blown up, I don't think, but the reports were it was blown up. And this is actually very close to Svatove indeed. So that bit of brown ground, it almost looked like a river in the footage I saw. It looked like a small vehicle traveling across a river into the woods. Well, that looks like that's that area there. So, or at least one of these areas, such as that in this area around Dashne. So somewhere around here, could be there, could be there. The edge of that forested line around Dashni. Now, the importance of that is they are hitting vehicles very close to Svatove, and that will be a vehicle that is protecting Svatove from aerial attack. So that's super important. But other than that, what else do we have? A Russian war reporter, War Gonzo, reports difficult battles in Novoselivsky, Luhansk region. So that's just northwest of Svatove. The small town is located directly west of the P007 highway and next to Kuzmivka, which the Ukrainians unsuccessfully tried to storm 2 days ago. So there's, as I keep saying, there's heavy fighting around Kuzmivka, and that will enable the Ukrainians, if they get that, to sort of skirt around the north of Svatove and concentrate on some of these towns. But it's really, really difficult. It's very slow going. So yeah, lots of claims of attacks and counterattacks. No confirmed map changes. We've got some credible information about Popivka, just southwest of Svatove. That's what I just said. The signals are good, but bear in mind that still a lot needs to be done to clear a town so close to the front line. And isn't that true? Okay, as we come further down south, General Staff confirms that Ploshchanka was shelled by Russian forces again. The last 2 days we mentioned the town being described as difficult by the Russians. It's highly likely the Ukrainians now has presence inside the city and is on the verge of liberation, or already has. So just to remind you, Ploshchanka is going down the P66 highway. This is Ploshchanka, where I've got this sort of triangle of advance. I mean, who knows what it exactly looks like, but it's difficult around there. Counterattacks around Chervona Popivka, again repelled by the Russians. So this is the usual stuff going on there. No difference, but things are happening, or there is heavy fighting. And then we come down a little bit south of Kreminna, and it looks like really the Ukrainians apparently have control of the entire forest now. So the claims are that pretty much it looks like that. So I'll just adapt my map accordingly. That's coming from a variety of sources, but we'll wait to get full confirmation of that. It'll be interesting to see how they use that to harass areas around here. A direct attack on Kreminna and these larger cities or towns is going to be unlikely. So Rubizhne, Severodonetsk, and Kreminna are unlikely to be frontally assaulted. But we'll see how that develops. And then we come down Bilorivka, sort of similar as yesterday. Counterattacks and attacks around there. Spirne, apparently the same as well. That's quite a hot area, and around this town there with a very long name that I won't pronounce. Sorry. And then we get towards Bakhmut, and actually Bakhmut, there has been some news and movement on that front. So as we get to just to go backwards a little bit, that's that very long town name. Unsuccessful assaults towards Spirny, the Russians, they were repelled. So as we get onto Bakhmut, no map changes. Russia increased its attack south of Bakhmut and is heavily bombarding Opitny area. Actually, I'm going to add to that, and I think there are some map changes. The Ukrainians return fire in a proper way that that stalls the enemy or leaves them only in retreat, fighting mainly in Bakhmut, Soledar, Bilorivka, Opitny, Evyangrad, and Mayorsk. And that is the southern Bilorivka we're talking about there. So I'm going to get on to talk to you about some changes. But before I do that, there has been claims that Su-35C, which is one of the most modern forms of the Su-35 fighter. I don't know if the Su-35C is a version of Su-35S. There is some claim at the bottom of this article that they can sometimes be called the same thing. But either way, it's one of their more modern fighters, Sukhoi fighters or jets. So that has apparently been shot down by Nazans near the Bakhmut area. The pilot ejected but did not survive. But I've just seen claims that actually this is a footage that is being used to suggest that this happened. Some people are now saying that is old footage. Now, the question is, does that mean that that hasn't happened, or just that that's the wrong footage applied to this event that has happened? So Nazans definitely weren't around until literally in the last week or so. So we know that any old footage like that won't have been Nazans. The question is, have they shot down a Su-35? That's just the wrong footage with Nazans in and around the Bakhmut area. I guess we'll find out at some point soon. And the sort of things that they're doing as well around Bakhmut is using drones. These are the Ukrainians using drones to just hit machine gun positions. So here we just have a lot of dropping sort of delayed release, if you like, or explosion grenades, some form of explosive anyway, that take sometimes quite a few seconds to detonate, and they're blowing up these machine gun positions and just taking things out. So you can see how drones are being used in improvised fashions to take out mechanized pieces of equipment, like a tank, dropping them down hatches. Like some of the larger bits of ordnance will be used to blow up those bits of equipment, and then these smaller explosives being used to just destroy machine gun positions and literally machine guns, and then that helps to give cover, or at least helps to prevent the troops from being shot with machine guns. So that's important for the ground troops there. Now, the claim is that there's been actually going on for a few days that the Ukrainians have been retreating from a waste disposal center, some waste management center in the Bakhmut area. So this is the Bakhmut area. We have fighting still going on in Soledar and Bakhmutskaya up the north, and we've got fighting in Opitny as well. But what we are now seeing, and I had the Russian lines all the way back here based on some counterattacks that the Ukrainians did last week or so, but now it appears that the Russians have moved back in, and in fact, after some pretty intense fighting, they've taken this waste sorting plant here. I won't begin to pronounce that word or those words, but that's what they have, and this gives them a foothold in sort of southern eastern Bakhmut, and allows them perhaps to attack up this road towards the residential areas here, or indeed westwards, skirting this sort of lake there. It's not good news for the Ukrainians, because there was talk about this area over here, the Ukrainians having having control over. It seems that that's no longer the case, and now we've got the Russians pretty much getting a foothold in the town as a whole. Now, that doesn't mean to say they won't lose that again. These sort of places can go backwards and forwards, but it's certainly not good news for the Ukrainians. There's an awful lot of claim going on on Twitter and Telegram channels concerning the Russians doing this. As you can see, that's actually been over the last couple of days, and indeed, if you go right back to November the 16th, there was talk about it then. So this has been a couple of days for them to take that waste sorting plant, which they now have in their control, and the Ukrainians, we've got video evidence of the Ukrainians retreating from there. So that's not great for Ukraine. So as we come out of Bakhmut and further down south, and obviously there's still lots of fighting around Opitny, and we move towards Avdivka, past Mayorsk, where we see a lot of fighting as well. I'll move that blue line a little bit further back to represent the fact that Russia seems to be doing better in Mayorsk. We come to Avdivka, and Avdivka is the scene of quite a lot of intense fighting. Again, I sound like a stuck record, but it really is, particularly Opitny, Vodyanye, and Pervomaisky. So Vodyanye is only partially controlled by the Russians. As you come sort of, in a more westerly direction, it you obviously have a change of control, but this is where there's heavy fighting. If Vodyanye falls to the Russians, obviously they will get have the ability to encircle Pervomaisky and flank it to some degree. So that's obviously going to cause a lot of problem for keeping hold of Pervomaisky. But this is all just a pretty, as I showed you from footage the other day, pretty much destroyed. The houses, and the same will be for this area as well in the Pervomaisky area. So it's tough going around that area. But also, I reported to you about Nevelsky, which is a tiny settlement just down south of Pervomaisky here. And yesterday, I put it in control of the Russians. Well, actually, no, I said it was already in control of the Russians because that was information I'd had from some time ago, and I hadn't really thought of it since then. And it turns out it's not. And the Russians have said they've made advances on Novelsky, and that's what we were talking about yesterday. But actually, that really might just pertain to this area to the southeast. And that's because all of this is really heavily fortified. And I have to say, this is the same for everywhere here. So this has been a front line since 2014, right? And so every hedgerow is a trench, to some degree. Everything is super fortified around here, which is why it takes uh, weeks to move meters. There's nothing that better sort of indicates this or reflects this than the Novelsky area. So Novelsky is itself, with its farming buildings sort of here, is super fortified, a forward artillery position, and obviously with the settlements as well. But actually, it's the hedgerow. Every single one of these, so every line you can see here is a hedgerow, which is effectively an entrenched line. And then you get these fortifications, which you can actually see on this Google Maps, and this will be probably several years old. I don't know when the Google Maps were taken from this, but these fortifications are will be much more extensive than what you can see here. So let's look at there's this fortification I was just showing you there. That will have trenches around it. That will have dugouts. There will be underground sort of areas. This is what's called the swimming pool. Now the Russians have just taken the swimming pool. As you can see here, there are trenches you can see from Google Maps. Now there will be far more extensive trenches than that now. There are dugouts under here, there are turrets, there are all sorts of stuff going on around this. This is called the swimming pool. I think it's because it's a former sort of reservoir or something, small reservoir. And that is what has been taken. So let's just go to a couple of sources. Donetsk, this is one of the hotspots of the active front line. Russia's goal is to encircle Avdivka. The strategy is to shoot through artillery, shoot enough artillery at it to level it to the ground. Sooner or later, even concrete breaks, but I don't see Avdivka being occupied in the near future. This is Rybar, the Russian source, saying the DNR 100th Brigade established control over the swimming pool southeast of Novelsky. That's what I was just showing you. The Ukrainians twice attempted to retake the area without success. The position allows the road from Krasnohorivka to Pervomaisky to be kept under fire control. So let's return to what we're looking at. So this is going to be a road from Krasnohorivka, which is here, to remain under fire control. So if they can get some kind of artillery or mortar in there or something, then these roads up here that get you again to Novelsky and up to Pervomaisky can be further attacked from here. So this seems to be quite an important little fortification. But as I was showing you, there are, as you can see here, there are trenches there, and each of these tree lines just will have entrenchments there. So here's another one that's still under the Ukrainian control, and there will be trenches all around there. uh, you can maybe see that that's a trench line from there. I mean, it might not definitely be, but I can imagine it is. Trench lines here and there, possibly, unless they are just natural uh, y- natural irrigation channels or something. But quite often the soldiers will use irrigation channels to build their trenches. That's what's happened a lot in Kherson. Now this, you can see the pock marks on the ground here. So this will almost certainly be from the last 8 years of war that has pretty much devastated these areas. um it would be interesting to know when the Google pictures were taken. Point being that Novelski is really, really important for this whole area, even though looks a fairly insubstantial settlement, because everything around here is really heavily fortified, and that's why um, you know they are it's making such hard work of taking these grounds all around here, because they'll be under artillery fire whilst they're trying to take trenches, and it's just, I mean, who would want to be in those trenches as well? Goodness me. So yeah, really difficult work around there. Marinka as well, um, fighting there as always, and then we come down to Pavlivka and Vuhledar. So we have. I did a bit of, and I'll tell you what, there's something exciting about geolocating. I did a bit of geolocation here concerning some uh, artillery action going on in around Pavlivka. Oops. So in around Pavlivka. Oh, but they've already geolocated it. God, I wish I'd seen that before. Damn it! I just wasted ages geolocating that. Anyway, not to worry. So these are the Ukrainians attacking an area of Pavlivka. So you can see lots of troops moving around there as the artillery hits around that position. So that is here. So this is on the south of Avdivka, sorry, Pavlivka, and moving towards these sort of larger, I don't know whether they are agricultural buildings. So there's a lot of activity going on here, which is to say that Pavlivka is, exactly what it has been, which is a death trap where any Russian military establishment here will be seen from above, or from like directly above, or from Vuhledar, and then you just send in the artillery, hit these coordinates, bish bash bosh. It seems a pointless exercise to me, at least. So yeah, that is what is continuing to happen in Pavlivka. Apparently, the Russians have repelled a Ukrainian counterattack near Solodki, again near this Stepney area. So this is where the Ukrainians are trying to push back to relieve themselves around this area so that they don't get flanked. Because as soon as they lose these, it looks like Vuhledar would go, and then it all might start falling. So it's really important that all these parts of the jigsaw are kept in place for them. Now, just in the region as a whole, this is a kind of Ukraine military report that Russia's mobilized, suffering substantial losses, with about 500 wounded taken to occupied town of Horlivka, Donetsk region, and 40 killed and 70 wounded taken to Crimea. 70 wounded taken to Crimea. Russia continues its attempt to capture the towns of Bakhmut and Avdivka. Of course, over what period, that's just it's not particularly useful statistics, but it's reflective of the fact that it is really tough up and down that whole front, really. And then we come down to Kherson. What can we find out about Kherson? Well, the first thing to say is that it is starting to receive artillery hits on apartment blocks, which is kind of what Russia seems to like to do. Russia's begun shelling civilians in Kherson a week after it was liberated. The Kremlin still insists that it is part of the Russian Federation, yet they happily hit tower blocks. This is in the Komishani district of Kherson. No casualties. So yeah, that is what's happening there. Let's have a look at what the ISW has to say, the Institute for the Study of War. So the Ukrainians are saying 50 Russians were killed in that hit on Skadovsk. That Cheplinka and ammunition depot is hit. They are hitting. I showed a vehicle getting hit in Oleshki. You've got Novokakovka, Holopristan, all these places suffering, hits from the Ukrainians on particular things, installments, whether it's a vehicle or bases or whatever, military installments up and down this river. But likewise, the Russians are hitting, Berislav and all sorts of areas on the right bank of the river as well. So it's sort of tit for tat in that respect. Something else just to note is that it appears that Russians have also shelled Ochakiv, which is this place from where the attacks or the landings on the Kinburn Spits and the Kinburn Peninsula have been made. So they obviously note that that. I think there are Marines based there, or like seaborne troops. That are based in Ochakiv, and that's probably why that's been targeted. The Russians are building defenses, taking this time, I think, to build defenses all around Zaporizhia, as well as Zaporizhia, Crimea, and whatnot, whilst also hitting the same old targets, Nikopol and Mahanets, often hit. And the Ukrainians, on the other hand, seem to be targeting logistics quite a bit, and that would be exactly what I would expect. Hit those railway lines and really damage the ability of Russia to reinforce, to supply their troops and their front lines. They are a railway army, as we know, and so doing that makes an awful lot of sense. Anyway, thank you so much for your support. Please like, subscribe, and share. Remember, I'm trying to move my channel over to my new home. It's got no real content on there yet, just a little welcome video I did yesterday, but ATP Geopolitics. So if you put youtube.com/@ATPGeo, that will get to here. And next week, I'm going to start putting my extra videos on here, and then eventually start doing all my content here. But we'll see how successful that works out as being. Anyway, thanks for your support. Toodle pips. See you later.